In this video, I'll be showing you how to integrate Google Sign-In with the Django website. This will allow you to sign in with your Google accounts and then use Django as you normally would. Now, before we get into that, I will mention that my name is Tim. I run the YouTube channel Tech with Tim, which has hundreds of other programming tutorials, and I'm a developer advocate for Akamai. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the video. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, as a quick recap here, we're going to be creating a Django project. We're then going to be adding Google authentication to that. Now, there is quite a few steps here to set this up. However, it's not overly complicated, and each step is actually fairly small and simple to follow through with. So just kind of a warning here, make sure you go through the video and kind of pay attention to each individual step. If you miss even one of them, it may cause this setup to not work properly. So if you are having issues, slow down the video, rewind, pause, etc. Take your time with it, and just make sure you get all of the steps done correctly. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. I've opened up Visual Studio Code. This is where I'm going to set up this project. I've just opened a folder here on my desktop, but you can do this wherever you want. Now, the first thing we need to do is install Django. I imagine many of you already have this installed, but if you don't, you're going to type pip install and then Django like that. Okay, so that's going to install Django for you. Now, once you have Django installed, what you're going to do is use the Django admin command to start a new project. So we're going to say Django admin and then start project, and then you can call this whatever you want. I'll just call this Google. And we got an issue here. Google conflicts with the name of existing Python module. Okay, so of course we can't use that. Let's do Google login. Okay, so we've created a Google login project. Now inside of here, we have our kind of main app. So what we're going to do is cd into Google login. And now that we're inside of here, we're going to create a new app. So I'm going to say Python manage.py, and then this is going to be start app, and I'll just call this users. Now you can call this whatever you want. You could call it again Google login or Google or something like that, but I'll just go with users. Okay, so now we've created our app. Now that we have done this, what we need to do is add our app to our installed applications. So we have users here. We're going to go to Google login settings.py. We're going to go to installed apps here, and we're just going to add users like so. All right, so now we have created our app. We've kind of set up the main Django project, and a lot of the work we're going to have to do is going to be within this settings.py file. Now, I just want to make it clear here that I am going to assume you have some familiarity with Django, so although I will explain what I'm doing, I won't explain kind of all of the Django syntax and some more basic stuff that I'm sure most of you have already seen before. Okay, so now that we have our Django app kind of set up, what we need to do is actually create a new project on Google, since we're going to be using Google services to sign in. Now, what we'll do is we'll go to the Google console, which I'll do in a second. We'll create a new project. We'll set up our OAuth consent screen, and then we will create some credentials that we can use here from Django. So let me open up that page, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I've just Googled here Google Cloud Platform or Google Cloud Console. You're just going to want to go to this URL right here. So console.cloud.google.com. Now from here, just change your Google account in the top right-hand corner to be the one that you want to use, and then create a new project. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've switched my Google account here, and now what I'm going to do is click on the project tab, and I'm going to create a new project, and let's call this Django-tutorial. Okay, let's go ahead and create that. Now we're going to wait for that project to finish, and once it's done, we're going to select that and then start setting up our OAuth, which is kind of the Google sign-in credentials. So let's click on select project. We're now inside of Django tutorial. Now that we're here, we'll expand the navigation menu. We'll go to APIs and services, and the first page we'll go to is this OAuth consent screen. Okay, so let me make this full screen. So here is where we're going to set up kind of the page you'll see when you click on sign in with Google. So you've probably seen this before. You click on sign in with Google, it brings up a page and says, this company wants to access your information. That's really what this screen is that we're setting up. And we need to do this first before we can generate our OAuth credentials. So since we are not a part of a Google organization, we have to select the external here. Now it's going to tell you that you're only able to use specific test users. That's actually not really the case. You can sign in with any Google account, at least from my experience. So don't worry about kind of the description and all of this stuff for right now. Just click on external and then click create. Now here we just need to fill in all of this information. So let's fill in our app name. I'm just going to call this Django tutorial. I'm going to blur my email out here so you guys don't see it, but we do need to select this. You can select a logo if you want, and then you can fill in these different details. Now, in my case, I don't have a homepage, privacy policy, or terms of service link, so I'm not going to put those in. And same with the authorized domains. We'll leave that empty for now, and we'll end up filling that in later. Lastly, you need to make sure that you fill in a developer contact info, so do that and then click on Save and Continue. All right, so once you do that, you're going to be brought to a scopes page. Now, at this scopes page, we just need to add the scopes or the information that we want to get access to. So I'm going to click on Add or Remove Scopes, and we're going to add the first two here, which is the email and the profile. This way, we're able to get information like their name, their profile photo, all of that, and then we could use that in Django if we want to. But most importantly, we just need the email, but we'll select both of these for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on Update. Now that we're here, we'll go Save and Continue and move to the next page. Now it's going to ask us if we want to add test users. Now that's while the publishing status is set to testing, it only allows us to use the users that are here. As I said before, we actually don't need to do this. We're able to sign in with essentially any Google account. So you can add a test user if you want, but in my experience, we don't need to, and it's still going to work otherwise. So let's go ahead and click Save and Continue. All right, now it has some information here. Again, I'm going to blur out my emails. We will click on Next, and then we're pretty much done with this page. All right, so now I am back on my dashboard, and where I'm going to go is to the credentials page. Essentially, what we're going to do here is create some credentials that we're going to use from Django, and that's going to allow us to use the kind of service here provided by Google to sign in with Google. So we're going to go create credentials. We're going to select Auth client ID, and then we're going to make sure this is web application because that's what we're doing with Django. In terms of the name, you can call this whatever you want. I'm just going to call it Django. And then as it says here, make sure you have your OAuth consent screen. All right, so now we're going to fill in our authorized redirect URL. So we're going to do http:// and then this is going to be not localhost, but 127.0.0.1 and then port 8000. Now, as well as that URL, we're going to add another one, but this is going to have the following. It's going to be accounts/ and then this is going to be Google/login/callback. So make sure you name it exactly this. This is just what the callback URL is going to be that we need during the Google sign-in process. Okay, so add both of these here to your authorized redirect URLs or URIs, whatever you want to call it. And obviously, if you're using a real domain and not using localhost, then you would put the real domain here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create this. As it says, it can take up to 5 minutes, and there you go, it's actually been created already. So what we need now is the client ID and the client secret. So I am going to download this. Obviously, you don't want to share this information with anyone, and I'm going to store it in the same directory where my project currently is. So that's going to be up here, Django Google Login. Let me save that JSON file so we have access to it later. Okay, that's all we need to do from Google for right now. So now that we've done that, let's continue to set up Django. All right, so now that we're back here into VS Code, we're inside of settings.py from our Google login project. What we need to do is create a few new variables and then add some content to some of the existing variables. So the first thing we need to do is add site_ID, and we're going to make this equal to 1. We may need to change this later, but for now, make this equal to 1. It's very important you have this variable. If you don't have this, then we're going to have an error that pops up later. So just make sure you add site ID equals 1. This is because we can potentially have multiple sites. We need to identify which site it is that we're using for our login. Okay, next, inside of our installed apps, we're going to add a few more applications for doing kind of our social sign-ins, right? So we're going to say Django.contrib.sites. That kind of correlates to this variable here. And then we're going to add all auth. Now this is built into Django, and this allows us to do authentication with things other than just, just a standard sign-in. We can do this with Google as well now. Okay, so we're going to add all auth dot and then account. We're going to add all auth dot social account, and then we're going to add all auth dot social account. If we could spell this correctly, .providers.google. Now, obviously, if you're adding Facebook or other types of authentication, then you would do a similar thing here and change this to Facebook, GitHub, etc., whatever the other kind of sign-in methods are that you want to use. In this case, I'm just going to show you Google. Okay, so now that we have added our installed applications, the next thing that we need to do is specify a variable for our social account providers. So in all capitals here, we're going to say social account underscore providers. is equal to, and then we're going to specify the scopes for our different providers. So we're going to put Google, and then here we're going to put in all capitals scope, and then we're going to list the scopes that we specified in our credentials. So this is going to be profile and email. Okay, so these are going to match with what we specified when we were creating that kind of Google credential. Remember, we did profile and we did email, so that's why we're putting those here. Okay, next, we're going to do in all capitals again, auth underscore params, okay? And then we're going to say that the access type, and then this is going to be equal to online. Okay, there we go. Let me just quit out of this Python terminal. I don't even know how I got into that. All right, so that is all we need for right now for the social account providers. Again, if you had other providers, then you would list kind of a similar thing here for those. In this case, we are just using Google. Okay, next thing that we need to do is we need to add something called our authentication backends, and we're going to do this at the very end of our file. So scroll all the way down to the end of the file, and again, in all capitals, we're going to add the authentication underscore backends. And it looks like I spelled authentication incorrectly, so let's just use our spell check here. Okay, so authentication backends, and then this is going to be equal to a tuple. And inside of this tuple, we're going to put Django.contrib.auth.backends. And then this is going to be the model backends. And then next, we're going to do all auth.accounts.auth backends.authentication backend. Okay, so essentially we're specifying that we're using kind of the standard Django backend as well as the all auth backend. We need both of these here for this to work for our Google sign-in. All right, lastly, there's two more variables that we need to define. The first one is going to be our login, and then redirect. Again, we got to spell this correctly. Redirect, and then URL. And this is going to be equal to /, and then we're going to do our logout underscore redirect underscore URL. Again, this will be equal to /. Let me fix my spelling here. Okay, perfect. So we have our login redirect URL and our logout redirect URL. And now we are pretty much done in this settings.py file. Okay, so now that we have all of our settings in here, let me just quickly recap so you don't miss any. We have our site ID. We added all of these right here. So we had our users. If you named your app something else, you're going to change it, obviously. So it's not users. Then all of these, django.contrib.sites, all auth.account, all auth.social.account, and then all auth.social.account.providers.google. We then added our social account providers. We then went all the way down to the bottom of our file. We added our authentication backends, and then our login redirect URL and our logout redirect URL. If you have a different page that you want to redirect to, obviously you can change this. In my case, we're just doing the home page. Okay. Now that we have done this, we're going to go to urls.py. This is from our Google login, and we're going to add a set of URLs here. So the first URL path that we need to add is path, and then this is going to be an empty string, and then we're going to say include. Now this is a function that we need to import, so we're going to import this here, and we're going to include the URL patterns from our Google, and then this is authentication, if we spelled this correctly, .urls. Now this is coming from the all auth package, right? So we have Google authentication.urls, and this is what provides that callback URL that you saw that we added when we set up our Google project. Okay, next we're going to make another path here, and this path is going to be accounts /, and this here is going to give us all of the roots related to our user accounts, so resetting the password, signing out, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to have accounts. We're then going to say include, and then this is going to be all auth.urls like that. And there we go. We now have what we need inside of our URLs. Now, one thing we also want to add here is the URLs for our app. So for our users app, which we'll create in a second. So I'm going to say path, and then this is going to be users.urls. And sorry, this is just going to be /, and then include, and then users.urls. Okay, my apologies about that. All right, so these are the URL paths that we need. Pause the video if you need to copy them in. And now that we've done that, we're going to open up our users, and we are going to create some URLs. So we're going to make a new file here, and this is going to be urls.py. Now, inside of urls.py, we need to create our URL patterns for our home screen and for a logout screen. Again, we're going to write those in a second. So I'm going to say from Django dot, and then this is going to be URLs. We're going to import path, and then we're going to say from dot import views. All right, and that's going to import the views file here, which we'll use in a second. And we're going to say URL patterns is equal to, this is going to be an array, and we're going to say path. We're going to put an empty string, and then we're going to say views dot home. So this is going to be our home screen, which is just the empty path. Then we're going to have another path here. We're going to call this logout, and this is going to be views.logout underscore view. Okay, so we need to write both of these views, which we'll do in a second, but that's why we're adding them here to our URLs file. Now that we've done that, let's go inside of views and let's create a view for our home page. Let's also create a view for signing out. So first we're going to say from Django.contrib.auth import, and we're going to import the logout function. And then above here, we're going to import the redirect function. So first we're going to say define home, and we're going to say request, and then we're going to return the render function. We're going to render request, and then the template we're going to use is called home.html. Again, we'll create that in a second. Next, we're going to say logout underscore view. This is going to be request. And then we're going to call the logout function, passing the request object. This will log out our user. And then we're going to return the redirect to the empty root. Okay, so there you go. We have the two views that we need. That's actually all we need for this file. Now we need to create this home.html template where we'll have our Google sign-in button and some other stuff there as well. So we're going to go to users. We're going to create a new folder. It's very important you name this folder exactly as I have here, which is templates. It needs to be named exactly that. Inside of templates, we're going to create a new template called home.html. Again, make sure you name it exactly home.html. So I'm going to use my built-in snippets here just to generate some boilerplate code. If you don't have that snippet, HTML:5, then you can just obviously type this out. For the title, I'm going to say Django Google sign in. And then what we're going to do is create a button that allows us to sign in with Google, and then we'll display some basic information about our Google sign-in, like, if you're signed in, if you're not signed in, and then allow you to log out. So the first thing we need to do here in our template is we need to load our social accounts. So we're going to say load social account. And now that we've done that, we're going to have the ability to use a login URL, which you'll see in a second. So I'm going to make a h2 tag here, and I'm going to say Google login, and then I'm going to put an a tag here for a link. Now I'm going to say href is equal to, and then inside of 2% kind of, what do you call this, curly braces here. This is one of the syntax in the Django templating engine. We're going to say provider underscore, and then login underscore URL. This is a variable, and then we're going to put here Google. So what this is going to do is use a special function that's going to give us the URL for Google sign-in. Now I need to make sure that I don't have the same types of quotes inside and outside. So notice I have my double quotations, and then here I have my single quotes. You saw I was kind of getting some weird syntax highlighting when I didn't have that, so I've just fixed that now. Okay, so that's going to be the URL that we want to go to, but then we need to say question mark next is equal to /. Now this is essentially defining the route that we want to go to after we come back from this URL. So after we come back from the Google sign-in page. Then we're going to say login with Google. Obviously we can make this look better, but for now this is fine. Okay, so that's all we need for now. We will start testing this in just a second once we go through some few kind of smaller steps here. All right, so this is our home.html template. Remember, we have our views here, we have home, and we have logout. We have our URLs file that has the paths to these different views. And then we have URLs here, which include these URLs. And actually, I can get rid of this / and just make this an empty string. I don't think that's going to make a difference, but just for consistency here with this path. All right, now that we've done this, what we want to do is just make some migrations on our database to make sure everything is synced up. So we're going to say Python manage.py, and then this is going to be make migrations. And sorry, I need to cd into the correct directory. So I'm going to cd into Google login, and then I'm going to say Python manage.py make migrations. And I got an error here saying new module Google authentication. So I think I may have spelt this incorrectly. Let me have a look here in my URLs. So actually, my apologies here, guys. I was referring to kind of a cheat sheet on my other monitor, and it looks like I accidentally included this line. No, we actually don't need this. Don't worry about kind of why I put that there, but either way, we actually don't need that. We only need the URL to our main app and then to the all auths URLs. Okay, so my apologies. Let's get rid of that. And now that that is gone, we should be able to make our migrations. So Python manage.py make migrations. There we go. Now that we've done that, we're going to migrate. So we're going to say Python manage.py migrate and apply all of our migrations. And now that we've done that, we can actually run our server, and there's a few other steps, and then we can see if this is working. So I'm going to say Python manage.py and then run server to run our Django server. Okay, so now our server is running. I'm going to open up this URL. And notice that we're brought to the home page where we have Google Login. Now, we're not quite ready to click this right now. You can see if I do this that I get an error. And the reason for that is we haven't hooked up our Django site here to our Google credentials. So notice we have our client information here. Let me just save this so it auto formats. We have for our client ID and then our client secret. This is what we actually need now to kind of add to our project. So let's go back to Django. And what we want to do is go to /admin. All right, so I've just ran into an error here. This is due to a spelling mistake. Notice it says no module named allauth.accounts. The reason for that is that if we go back to settings.py, we can see I've said allauth.accounts. This needs to be account. So let's change that back to account. My apologies about that. And now that that is fixed, let's go here and refresh, and notice we're brought to the admin page. Okay, so I want to go to admin. Now, what we need to do to sign into the admin page is we need to create a super user account, which we may actually need to do before starting the server. So I'm going to stop my Django server, and I'm going to type Python manage.py and then create super user. Okay, so we're going to create a super user here. It says leave blank to use Tim, which is actually the name that I want to use, so that's fine. I'm not going to put an email address in, and then for my password, I will just do a numeric password to make this easy to remember. Yes, that is fine. Okay, so I've created a super user account. You should do the same, whatever username you want, and just a password you're going to remember. Now we can rerun the server. Okay, and let's go back to our admin page. So let's just refresh here, and now I'm going to sign in. Okay, so let me sign in here. Notice my password was kind of already filled in because I've done this before. All right, so now we're brought to the Django admin website. Now here, what we need to do is create a new site. So we're going to go to sites, and notice we have this example.com. So what I'm going to do is actually delete this. So let's go action, delete, go, and yes, I'm sure I want to delete that. And now I'm going to create a new site. Now for the domain name, all we're going to do is http:// and then this is going to be 127.0.0.1 and then port 8000. Okay, so that's the domain we're on right now. Same thing for the display name. We'll just go exactly with this. All right, so let's go save here, and now we've added our site. Now we're going to go to social applications, and we're going to add a new social application. So for the social application, this is where we're going to put in Google. Notice that's the only one because that's the only provider that we provided when we set it up in our installed apps. And now for the name, we can make this anything. So I'll just call this Google. And now we need the client ID and the client secret from our Google configuration file. So I'm going to go back here to VS Code. Let me just make this half screen. I'm going to open up this file, and I'm going to copy my client ID and paste that here. I'm going to copy my client secret. Same thing, I'm going to paste this here. We do not need to put anything in for the key, but what we do need to do is associate this with our site. So we're going to click this arrow to move the site over here, and now we can click on save, and we have hooked up our Google kind of social platform or sign in method. At this point, that should be everything that we need to do to actually start using our Google sign in method. So what we can do now is go back to the home page. And let's see now if this works. I'm going to go log in with Google. And I got an issue here saying accounts Google login does not exist. Okay, so the reason why we're likely getting this has to do with our site ID. Now, I ran into this error previously, so don't worry about it. I'll show you how to fix it. And this is what I was mentioning before. So we're going to go back to settings.py. We're going to go here to our site ID. Now, the site ID is the ID of the site that we're using for Google sign-in, and in most cases it is going to be 1. However, you saw that we had a default site there of example.com. Since we had that, it's likely that that site ID was 1, and the site we just created has an ID of 2. So I'm going to change this now to be 2, and save. That should automatically update for me. And now if I go back here and I refresh, notice that we're brought to the correct page. Now notice here that we're getting an error, and it's saying access blocked, this apps request is invalid, and it's giving us a redirect URI mismatch. So I'm going to go to the error details, and it's telling us here that if you're the app developer, register the redirect URI in Google Cloud Console. Now I believe we already did that, however we may have misspelled it. So I'm going to copy the URI that it's giving me right here, and we're going to go back to our Google Console, which I actually have open, go to our OAuth 2 client IDs, and we're going to go and add this URI. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in. Now, this looks to me to be the same. Maybe it's just that we forgot the trailing slash. Either way, let's save this. And now we'll go back and we'll see if this is going to work. So let's go back to our main page. Okay, so let's just go here to port 8000. Let's try to sign in with Google. And now notice that we were able to sign in. We just had the wrong redirect URI. So I'm going to blur these emails here so that you don't see them, but I will pick an account to sign in with. Let me go ahead and sign in with, let's do this one. And now it should bring me back to the home page, and I'm now signed in with Google. All right, so now signing in with Google is working, and you'll see that if I click this button again, brings me back to the sign in page, and again, I can sign in with a different account if I want to do that. Now that we are signed in, though, I want to show you how we can check if we are signed in and how we can sign out of this account. And then you can go and extend this project and build out all of the other kind of Django stuff that you would do using Google Sign-In. So let's close this page, and let's now go to our home.html, and I'll show you a few little things that we can use here to demonstrate whether we are signed in or not, just to kind of prove that. So beneath my A tag here, I'm going to put an if statement. So I'm going to go %%. I'm going to say if, and I'm going to use user, which is just a part of the request object. So I have access to that in the template. And then I'm going to use the is underscore authenticated, what would you call this, property. Okay, so I'm going to check if the user is authenticated. Let me just end my if here. And if they are authenticated, then what I'm going to do is put a p tag here, and I'm going to say you are signed in as, and then I can access the user's email using user.email. Okay, then I'm going to close my p tag. Next, what I'm going to do is create a logout button. So I'm going to do I'm going to say href is equal to logout. That's the name of our logout route, remember? And then I'm going to put logout here and close this tag. Okay, there you go. This should now tell us if we are signed in and then allow us to log in. So let's go back here and refresh. And of course, it appears as though I've made a typo. So let's go back here and fix this typo. Go here and refresh. And now notice it tells me that I am signed in. Okay, so now that I'm signed in, I can sign out by hitting the logout button. And notice it's going to call this logout route here, which just redirects me back to the home page and signs me out. Again, if I want to sign in, I can go ahead and do that. And then it's going to tell me I'm signed in as whatever the email is. And then, of course, I could log out. All right. So with that said, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. That's really all you need to know in terms of signing in with Google. And to do this with other providers is very similar, right? You're going to use Facebook or GitHub or whatever it is, and then kind of follow the same procedures, except there'll be slightly different stuff in terms of getting your GitHub API key or your Facebook API key or client ID, whatever that may be. Now, just to run you through the steps one more time, what we did is we created our Django project. We created a Django app. We went to settings.py. And we added our installed apps, okay? These are all the ones that you need right here. We also added our site ID. Then we added our social account providers. Then we went all the way down here and we added these 3 fields. So our authentication backends and our login and logout redirect URLs. Once we did that, we went to URLs. We added our URL routes, so the routes for our app, as well as the routes for all auth. Once we did that, we went to users. We created a urls.py file where we added the URLs for our main routes, for our homepage, and for logout. We then created these URLs. Then we went to our templates folder that we created, and we created this home template. from there, what we did was we created a super user. We then went to the admin page, signed in as that super user, created a new site, and then we associated that site with our Google sign-in information, which we got from going to the Google Cloud Console and creating a new set of credentials, as well as filling in our OAuth consent screen. All right, so hopefully that was a good summary. I hope this helped you get started with signing in with Google with Django. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in another one.